So, as I said in my previous video, I am going to talk about the second new artifact set, which is the Long Night's Oath, which focuses on the lore of Nod-Krai and mentions stuff like the Lightkeepers or the Wild Hunt. I know that everyone is freaking out about the new Song of the Welkin Moon update. Don't worry, I know about it of course. It's just that I didn't have the time to make a video about it the moment it dropped, and so many people already made a video where they explained the event, so I don't think I need to make one as well. Anyway, as always, this is just my interpretation of the lore. I don't look at leaks, so I can only use the information that's official and speculate about the rest. If you want to correct me or add something, please tell me in the comments down below. There isn't as much to say about this set as for example the finale of the Deep Galleries, but there is a lot of potential speculation and omitted details in the story of these. But with that out of the way, let's get to the lore. Now, the order in which these artifacts should be read isn't as clear as it may seem at first, but it's also not as important, and from what I gathered, it's best to start with the Flower of Life. It's also called the Lightkeeper's Pledge, and it talks about the days when the Wild Hunt attacks, aka the attacks of the Abyss, were frequent. Long before Nod-Krai was even established, there was a mad monk who tried to seize the power left behind by the Dead Moons, which we now know were the Iridescent Moon, Eternal Moon, and the Frost Moon. The monk spoke in strange tongues and presented his plan to the first Cryo Archon, the Belly Tsar, who ruled there before the Tsaritsa we know of nowadays. There they call him the Tsar of all Fae, indicating that there may be fairies in Snezhnaya, well at least in the past there may have been some. As a result of his plan, the Frost Moon Scions, or rather their ancestors, called the Moon Children, scattered throughout the mountains and forests. Their community was split, and some of their sisters were led astray. In the end, even the Mad Monk couldn't break free of the false sky and was consumed by its delusion. At that time, Nod-Krai was only a fantasy of paradise, shared by two children beneath the moon's glow. Many years later, one of them became a notorious bandit and was executed, and the other, who is also called the Torch Forger, finally realized the true meaning of the words that were spoken. But then, the Abyss destroyed everything in their path, until the Torch Forger borrowed the power of the Frost Moon Scions and raised a beam of light that banished the darkness in the name of the moon. When it all ended, the survivors built a lighthouse atop the mountains, gazing towards the new ruler of Snezhnaya, which is the Tsaritsa that rules Snezhnaya even today. The Torch Forger then defended his friend's dream of a paradise before the Tsaritsa, and in the end, he received the royal edict he sought from her. He also took upon himself an oath of vigilance and sacrifice, and thus the paradise known as Nod-Krai was born. Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure who these two children mentioned here are, because they could be a metaphor for the Tsar and the Mad Monk, but since one of them became the Torch Forger, the second one died, and the Tsar was replaced by the Tsaritsa during the Torch Forger's life, it wouldn't make much sense for them to be connected. Anyway, the Tsar mentioned here, the Belly Tsar, was revealed to us during the new update of the Song of the Welkin Moon, so now we know for sure that he is the first Cryo Archon. Also, the bandit mentioned in the story of this artifact piece could be referenced in the Song of the Welkin Moon in the form of Reed Miller, who is a legendary thief, and if I'm remembering the lore correctly, he is also the founder of the Treasure Hoarders, who also originated from Nod-Krai. But now let's continue with the Plume of Death, called the Nightingale's Tail Feather, which tells the story of the lighthouse of the Lightkeepers that stood guard throughout the long night. The people living in Nod-Krai believed that as long as this lighthouse stayed lit, they could live in freedom from both the Abyss and the rest of Snezhnaya. But then one night, the leader of the Wild Hunt galloped across the night sky, and the next day, the sun didn't rise. The warriors rallied at the lighthouse, but the current officials sat in silence, because an important host reached the city gates. They were the Fatui, and they said that even the warriors of Nod-Krai have no right to revoke the sacred powers bestowed upon them by the Tsaritsa. They had ulterior motives, and the official knew that well. From beneath the mask of the lead Fatui officer came a low and cold voice, and a mocking laugh. That is where the dark calamity began. Remember, Snezhnaya cannot bear the weight of your defeat. Warriors of Nightingale, fight with all your might. Yet should none of you return, then we will take care of the aftermath. So the one with the mask mentioned at the very end was likely Piero, since they mentioned his mocking laugh, and that is kind of his whole image, you know, the mocking mask and all. So it seems like the Fatui said that if the Lightkeepers lost the fight to the Abyss, then they will take care of what happens next to Nod-Krai, by which they probably mean that they will make Nod-Krai submit if they cannot defend themselves. Sons of Eon, also called the Undying One's Morning Bell, tells a story about the Wild Hunt and how they were seeking to harvest souls. These were legends passed down by people's ancestors, but in the end they found out that they were true. It mentions the Lightkeepers, led by someone who stood against the light, who wielded a sword and marched onto the battlefield from which none would return. In the end he was the only one left standing. Later he was left to walk alone in the Abyss to fulfill his oath. He was the Undying One mentioned in the artifact's name, who carried along the bell, and whenever people hear this mournful bell, it's a sign that the one who swore to hunt down the Wild Hunt is approaching. It's quite possible that the person this artifact talks about is in fact the Torch Forger, since we know that he made an oath about Nod-Krai to his friend, and so it's possible that he is still fighting the Wild Hunt to this day. Next is the Goblet, called Horn Unwinded, that tells us a story about the time when the horns proclaimed Snezhnaya's might, and the Fatui that swore his loyalty only to the Tsaritsa and no Harbinger, vowed to forge a new war. Even the people of Nod-Krai, who had their autonomy, remained as a part of Snezhnaya, because the Tsaritsa didn't abandon anyone who chose to follow her. One young officer defied his orders after seeing the chaos around him and saved many people. But because of this, he was deemed as a criminal and a traitor. However, Dottore didn't mind this, because he achieved his goal there. The Tsaritsa absolved him of his crimes by a newly sworn oath, and new warriors took up their watch against the abyss. Not much to say about this one, the lore there is really cryptic and doesn't reveal much details, so a lot of speculation would have to be involved to get anything more out of this piece. We don't really know what Doctor's plan or goal there was, what exactly happened and such, we just know that he was there and something did happen, but that's pretty much it. Circlet of Logos, also called the Dyed Tesla, tells a story of the first Torchforger. He stepped in the royal palace among all the Fey dignitaries of the court. When the cataclysm came, only a single rider in dark silver armor came to Nod-Krai's help from the north. The armor symbolized the bloodline of the descendants of the Lightkeepers, who first fought alongside the Torchforger to repel the Abyss. They upheld their oath because they believed that the Lord of all Fey and the Protector of Snezhnaya still watch over them. A young warrior now knelt among his fallen comrades on the battlefield, and so, like his ancestors, he prayed to an old god that no one called upon now. Somewhere out there, a long dormant phantom stirred from his slumber, and the legendary ghostly blue wildfire would burn brightly anew. It really does sound like a lot of this connects to the Song of the Welkin Moon, and the Lord of all Fey could either be the first Cryo Archon, or it could also be the Snowland Fey, who once followed the said Archon, because we know that they still influence the nation to this day. Well, that's it for the story of this whole artifact set. I tried to keep it quite simple, since they used a lot of different names for a lot of the same things, and for not really revealing much detail, they sure were quite cryptic. This is one of the many artifact sets that will likely make a lot more sense once we actually get to Nod-Krai and experience its story. Because at least from my point of view, this set seems to be omitting a lot of important stuff that will help to fill some blank spaces. Since I tried to summarize the story of these artifacts here, I don't want to get into much speculation about the stuff I didn't mention in this video, since it seems like a lot of it would be a huge stretch. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this short video, and that you maybe even learned something new. But this is all I wanted to say this time, so take care and I'll see you in the next one.